And now, the Commander-in-Chief is back. Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
Well, folks, we do want to welcome you to this Friday, December 16th edition of Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. And, in fact, today, this is Brandon Gallups, and I will be hosting live in the studios today. We do have a very, very special show lined up for today. The last 24 or so hours news cycle has been absolutely incredible. The biggest of all being the press conference held last night at Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, headed up by Sheriff Joe Arpaio and Detective Mike Zullo, revealing their findings of a 5-year criminal investigation into the birth certificate of one Barack Hussein Obama. And for anybody that was able to watch that live last night, what an amazing job that Mike Zullo did in presenting that evidence. And in the words of one of the document examiners, presenting the, quote, nail in the coffin when it came to the evidence of the birth certificate posted on the White House website that has now been proven forensically to be a fraud. And so in just a few moments, we are actually going to be bringing on live for the entirety of the show today. For the full 2 hours, we will have with us via telephone Detective Mike Zullo, as well as the Commander-in-Chief of Gulf Coast Talk Radio, Carl Gallups. I'm going to be bringing both of them on live in just a moment. They'll be on for the full 2 hours. Folks, be paying attention because at some point during the show today, we will open the phone lines up to take your calls. You will be able to talk to Mike Zullo live. You'll be able to talk to Carl Gallups and ask them questions about the press conference that was held last night. And we will be discussing some things today that were not able to be discussed at the press conference last night, just because of time limitations, of course. They had to cut some things short, and we're not able to reveal everything, so we'll be getting into all that. And so we are going to waste no time in getting to the heart of the matter, folks. This is potentially the biggest issue that our country has ever faced. There has been a man commanding our military for 8 years, with his finger on the red button for 8 years, determining policy for 8 years, using the power in his own words of his pen and his telephone through the dictatorial orders of the executive orders that he has signed for 8 years. And the only document he has ever offered us to prove that he is eligible to be all of those things that I just said and many, many more has been proven 100% to be a fraud. So, Mike, Carl, are you guys on the line?
Yeah, we're here, man. We are. How are you, Brandon?
Man, I'm doing great. Mike, first of all, to you and the sheriff, man, what an excellent job last night at the press conference and bringing all of that information together, pulling that all together in a way that people could understand and just making it so plain. And we'll let you get into the details of that, Mike, for people who may not have been able to see that. This may be the first time that they're being able to hear that information presented live. But just my applause to you and the sheriff and the entire office there at Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for last night and the very professional job that you guys did.
Well, thank you. You know, I'm glad we finally got to the bottom of it. I hope it has impact at some level. I don't know what that may be, but the truth is there, Brandon. I mean, we made it as plain as we could and cross-verified and verified every way you can think of. That's the document fraudulent copy of nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those, again, who this may be the first time that you're hearing this information presented, you weren't able to watch last night, you can go to the Freedom Friday Facebook page. We have links there to the entire press conference in its entirety. There's also a separate link there to the 9 points of fraud that just gets right to the meat of the fraud perpetrated on the birth certificate there. And for folks that don't know, Mike presented evidence last night. He had 2 different document examiners on 2 different continents with 2 different ways of examining this document, unbeknownst to each other, that both came to the same conclusion. So Mike, can you just kind of tell folks, elaborate on that a little bit for people who may be wondering, how did you come to this determination? How was this determination made?
Well, you know, if you go back over the years, back in 2012, Sheriff and I held 2 different press conferences. Both of them, those findings still stand. We're not divorcing ourselves from those findings. However, the problem we were encountering is there could be plausible explanations due to specific computer gyrations, digital processing, that would have made it difficult, even if you were to present this in a courtroom scenario, for a jury to come to the criminal element of determination, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. Even though we knew what we had was fraudulent, we knew that we would never succeed there, and if we couldn't, nobody would ever take the matter serious. So we began to look at this, and I looked at it, and I just really believed I needed to find a way to look at this document absent of computerized anomalies, things that could be explained by copy machines or digital processes or Photoshop. I needed to find something different. And in the course of that, through process of elimination of a lot of different computer anomalies that could have occurred, I was able to, determine that the document itself was actually a cut and paste job. Back in 2011, when I had interviewed Jerry Corsi for the first time, I interviewed Jerry Corsi for 16 hours, and 14 of those 16, I didn't believe anything he was showing me. And not that it wasn't real. I just personally just wasn't buying it. But then he showed me a couple things on the Obama certificate. But then he showed me a document that he had acquired while he was in Hawaii. And that document, lo and behold, came to be the source document for 9 points of forgery on the Obama certificate. And back in 2011, I relieved Jerry Corsi of possession of that document, and we took it into our custody, and it's been there ever since. And I can only tell you at some point divine intervention took place, because this document, Barack Obama's document, because of the document that I'm telling you about, the Ani birth certificate, literally caused this Obama PDF file to collapse upon itself.
Yeah.
Once we figured out the keys, it was over.
Yes, absolutely. And that's, last night you did such an amazing job of presenting the Ani birth certificate right next to the Obama birth certificate and the anomalies. And again, folks, you can go to the Freedom Friday Facebook page and you can watch these videos as Mike Zullo is presenting this information and showing you how very, very specific details off of this Ani birth certificate were removed from that birth certificate digitally and placed onto the birth certificate that still exists on the White House website. Certain angles and type prints that match up exactly. There's no mathematical equation that would allow for that to happen other than them being copied and pasted off of one document and onto another. And Mike, if I'm misspeaking in any way, please feel free to correct me in that.
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
Yeah, so that's what Mike is addressing right now, and that's what you will see on those videos, and that's what a good portion of the conference covered last night. And again, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is information. Listen, a lot of people, there are 12-year-olds that have looked at the White House birth certificate and said, well, it's a fraud. I mean, there's all these anomalies that exist, like you said, but you had to have something hardcore. And this is what it came down to. You now possess the document that have been proven by two different examiners, two different continents, with two different ways of verification that have come to the same conclusion. This is the document that was used to create the fake document that still exists on the White House website to this day.
Yeah, Brandon, that's a great synopsis. Let me jump in and just say it's been an honor to work with Mike Zullo on this and Sheriff Arpaio and to be a little teeny small part of it, but to be sitting here with him today after that press conference is a double honor. And let me say to our listening audience, I just want to iterate and reiterate some things that Mike has said. First of all, let me give just a quick synopsis of the profoundness of this whole thing. First of all, what has been done is, first of all, the President-elect, Donald Trump, has been vindicated. He is the one who forced this issue to eventually force the White House, the Obama White House, to put some kind of document on the government website that they all have been pointing to for the last 5 years, saying this is the identifying document. Obama and his minions have gone on television, comedy shows, and made jokes about his birth and his birth certificate and sneered and snickered at us. The mainstream media has tried to marginalize anybody who dared to ask the tough questions, anyone who dared to question the government narrative. And so all of this time, there's this document on the White House website. Now, in the meantime, what has happened is Donald Trump running for president, and in the general portion of the election, the media literally bullied him, if you can consider bullying Donald Trump, but they bullied him into making a statement to take this issue off the table until he could win the White House. And I understood what he was doing. In fact, I applauded him for doing what he was doing because I thought the bigger thing was for him to get in the White House so that if there was any chance of hearing this to its fullest at all and making any changes for the good of our nation, it would be with him, certainly not with Hillary Clinton. So I got that. But now here we are, just a few days away from the Electoral College and a few weeks away from his inauguration, and Sheriff Arpaio and Mike Zullo conclude their investigation, and here's the synopsis of it, Brandon, for the listening audience. Those who have dared to ask the questions, those who have dared to care about whether that document was an actual copy of a valid document or if it was a fabricated forgery, those who have been maligned and marginalized and lampooned and lambasted, you have been vindicated forensically, evidentiary. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you take to a courtroom to convict somebody of a major crime. And what is it that we have? Here's the synopsis. There are 9 specific points. There may be more, but we know of 9 that have been verified that indicate not only was this Barack Obama document pieced together, manipulated, forged, and fraudulently fabricated, not only was that done, but we now know and possess the source document for creating the forgery, and we know who the source document belongs to. Now, that's profound. You know, that is profound. And then the video demonstrates, and of course the sheriff's office has much higher quality video, and I mean it's courtroom ready stuff. The stuff on the internet, some people are saying, well, we need to blow that up. We can't see it in detail. But I promise you, in high quality video, the detail is staggering to the point that these 2 forensics entities, one in Hawaii, one in Italy, not knowing each other, they were working on it, both of them highly qualified, and Mike Zullo can give you their credentials in a moment. All of this stuff, as it was being discovered, was sent to them, and in fact, one of them, the one in Hawaii, discovered one of the most alarming elements on his own. And they came to the same conclusions, that this document, the Johanna Ani document that we now possess, is the document which was used to lift information off of it, transpose it onto whatever they were using to fabricate Barack Obama's documentation, and that's criminal. If I did that, Brandon, if I fabricated a birth certificate like that and went and got a job as a deputy sheriff, for example, or was elected to public office, I would be prosecuted for that. I would be put in jail for that. Right. So somebody's criminally liable for this. But this is huge because now you have to ask, since we know this was done, the question is, why? Why was it done? Why was the President of the United States? That's an excellent point. And guys, we're going to have to take a quick time out here and get this rolling. But we're going to stop right there and ask that question. Why? Why for 8 years would the man in the White House, as his only identifying document for us, the American people, why would he present something that is a 100% fake document? That's the question. Why? Well, folks, thank you and welcome back to Freedom Friday. Friday, December the 16th, a very special edition of Freedom Friday. This is Brandon Gallups hosting live in the studio today. And we have on the line with us together, we have Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups, and we have just been discussing the follow-up of the press conference last night, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, wherein Mike Zullo and Sheriff Joe Arpaio presented their findings from 5
years of criminal investigation into the only document ever offered by the man in the White House to prove his eligibility to do what he has done for the last 8 years. And when we ended the last segment, we asked a simple question. Why? Why in the world would Barack Obama allow the only document to verify his qualifications to be presented? Why would he allow that to be a fake document? Guys, go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you, Brandon. First of all, Brandon, thanks for sitting in for me today.
Thank you for the privilege. I always love being here.
Absolutely. And I think that you said something up front, and if you didn't, we'll say it now. A little later on in the show, we'll take phone calls and questions from people.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and since this is just a quick segment, let's go ahead and speculate on why this was done. And then after that, when we come back from the break, we can get into some of the details of the forensics companies, their qualifications, and some of the amazing things that they found. Is that okay?
That sounds like a perfect plan. We've got about 4 minutes in this segment, so yeah, let's get that done.
Let me proffer my speculations, then I'll turn it over to Mike Zullo. The bottom line is this. We have now been vindicated. What we've been saying all along, not only do we know that this document is a forgery, a fake, a fabrication, but we know where it came from. We know the source document. We have the source document. We know who owns the source document. We've got it. And 2 forensic companies have proven that that's the source document for this pieced-together thing that Obama's administration put on the White House. Now, the question is why. I can only think of 3 reasons, and I've run this by law enforcement professionals. I've run it by legal professionals, attorneys, even judges that I know, and they all agree. These are the only 3 things that we can come up with. Why would they do this? Number 1, they might have done it because they do have a birth certificate. He was born in the United States, but they just wanted to mess with the American public for 8 years. Well, the problem with that is that's a horrible way to be a president. And number 2, why would anybody commit a crime of that nature? And this is a crime, to just mess with the American public. So that doesn't really hold much water. The only other 2 would be that he does have a birth certificate. He was born in Hawaii. Everything is legitimate, but there's something on the birth certificate that he wants to conceal, that he's embarrassed of, ashamed of, whatever. Well, again, why would you commit a crime of this nature and lie to the American public for 8 years, make fun of us, your constituents, for 8 years over something like that? So that's a little weird. The only other thing I can think of, and maybe Mike can think of something else, the only other thing I can think of is he doesn't have an American birth certificate. He doesn't have a legitimate Hawaii birth certificate, and so they had to fabricate one. Now, we'll get into all of that later, but, I mean, those are speculations. But remember, this investigation truly was not about trying to discover where he was born. It was about, is this document a fake and a forgery and a fabrication? Because if it wasn't, then we would just have to accept it for what it was. But now, since we know it is not legitimate, now we ask why. Mike, what's your speculation?
Well, I agree with everything you just said. The one thing that's always troubling to me is the Kapolani Maternity Hospital reference on the birth document. The fact that it was first reported to be Queens Medical Center, and they were very quick to come out and say he wasn't born there. The fact that it's Kapolani, the fact that Kapolani had issued at one time a funding newsletter that included a letter from President Obama, like, was it 5 or 10 days after he was president, saying that he was born in the hospital. And when they were challenged by WND, they withdrew the letter because that would have been a crime. That's very suspect because that tells you there is no birth that took place in Kapolani. And when we went there, they were anything but cooperative. So that's always been suspect to me. So if there isn't a birth in that hospital, that would not be a problem in and of itself had the delivery been by midwife, which was very popular in Hawaii in that time period, although that doesn't seem to be the case. So it really starts to point you in a direction, perhaps there was no birth that occurred in the state of Hawaii, because they can't put a hospital down there. They don't know where it happened. We just know it happened because he's breathing. So that's one speculation. The other speculation is there was a reported birth. And a reported birth in Hawaii is a compulsory statute that tells Hawaiian officials, if someone comes in and just makes a representation that someone was born, you have to issue a certificate. You just need at least a name and possibly a location and that decides where the certificate is registered and how the certificate is filed and what limited information is on it, and that could always be amended at a later time.
Yeah, and Mike, you went into great detail in that in the press conference last night about how relatively easy it is to get a birth certificate in Hawaii, whether you were truly born there or not, and even the lax standards of the type of paper that the birth certificates are printed on. Guys, we're coming up against a hard break here, and we'll be back in a few moments. But, folks, we are here today, Freedom Friday, with a very special edition. Carl Gallups and Mike Zullo calling in live today after the press conference held last night by Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Mike Zullo, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, releasing 5 years of findings. Folks, the birth certificate on the White House website is a fake. We'll be back after this break. Well, folks, welcome back to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. This is Brandon Gallups hosting live in studio today, and we have with us via telephone today, we have Detective Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups both calling in live today, reporting on the aftermath, if you will, of the press conference held last night at Maricopa County Sheriff's Office regarding the fake long-form birth certificate presented on the White House website, still standing to this day, that after a 5-year criminal investigation has been proven by 2 different document examiners on 2 different continents, both of their works, unbeknownst to each other, to be a fake. So, folks, just exactly what you have been hearing here, and only a couple of other places for the last several years. The man in the White House has deceived us all. And isn't it interesting? With all of the talk of fake news, and we have to beware of fake news, the biggest fake news story of the last 5 years is the only document that exists to, quote, prove the eligibility of the man in the White House has been proven to be a fake. Folks, if you were not able to watch the press conference last night, there are links to it in its entirety, as well as a link to the 9 points of fraud. Just a very succinct video that shows you the 9 exact points of fraud that we know for sure exist on the birth certificate. And there may be many more. But you can find both of those. You can simply go to carlgallups.com, and there are links right there on the landing page to carlgallups.com in yellow that you can find those. You can also go to the Freedom Friday Facebook page, and you can find those links there. And I told you guys when we first started the show today that at some point we would open the phone lines to callers. You can call in. You can ask Mike or Carl a question, and I'm sure they would be happy to answer that to the best of their ability. So from this point forward, for the rest of the show, folks, the phone lines will be open. Just a couple of things. Number one, you are not going to call up here and chew out Mike Zullo or curse him out or anything else. I will cut you off, and the only thing that we ask is that you just call and you ask a very direct question, and then be prepared to take your answer off the air, because I'm sure that we are going to have a lot of callers. A lot of people have already called, and we've turned them away so far. But the phone lines are now open. Area code 850-623-1330. 850-623-1330. Mike, Carl, are you still with us?
Yes, we are, Brandon. And let me just tell our audience, I am monitoring our email site right now as we're on the air, freedomfriday@netzero.com. I've already got a question that we can answer right here from that.
Okay.
And there's several questions actually. And I'm also monitoring our Facebook page, facebook.com and then freedomfriday.carlgallups. I'm not guaranteeing you that we can answer everything coming in that way, but the ones that are interesting and are apropos, we will. So I'm going to read this first question and give it to Mike Zullo to answer. Is that okay, Brandon, while we're waiting on phone calls?
Sounds great, and we don't have to wait any longer. The phone lines are jammed. So
okay, I figured so. Well, let's deal with this first, and then we'll go straight to the phone lines. So I've got somebody saying, I'm listening to the live broadcast now. Can you review these 3 questions? And here they are. First of all, there must have been hundreds of potential birth certificates that could have been used as a source document to build Barack Obama's certificate. Isn't it odd that one document held by Jerome Corsi just happened to be one of those? There were 696 births apart from Obama and Anis, playing the odds. That seems highly unlikely. You want to deal with that one first? Okay. And there are 2 others. It says, how many other Hawaii birth certificates did you look at to see if they were source documents? And number 3, did you confirm the authenticity of Johanna Anis' birth certificate? Answer those 3 questions, Mike.
Well, let's go to the confirmation of Johanna's birth certificate. First off, with the inability of Hawaii to confirm birth certificates unless you have what's quote a tangible interest, you can't walk into the Hawaii Department of Health with a birth certificate and ask them if it's real. You have a big process to go through to get them to do something like that. However, the Ani certificate was clearly marked 1995 in the rear, clearly stamped, and it has a beautiful raised seal on the document. In addition, Johanna had relayed to us that she got the document the same time she applied for her daughter's long-form birth certificate in 1995, and they arrived in an envelope. I have the envelope, we have the contents, we have the other birth certificate. So I would believe at this point that that document is probably full-fledged. She did also try to go back and get another long form, but was unsuccessful because Hawaii would not issue it. Now, this kind of notion that the Ani certificate might be a forgery, I would really ask someone to try to explain to me why you think someone would create a forgery of the Ani birth certificate to prove what? That the Obama certificate is authentic?
Yeah.
I'm kind of lost in that.
Yeah.
Kind of lost in that. As a matter of fact, you would commit a forgery to try to cover up the forgery of the Obama certificate.
That's right.
If you were going to do it. So that's kind of out there. That's out there. The other one.
How many other Hawaiian birth certificates did you look at?
We had in our possession 9 in our possession, which was all that we could get over the 4 years that we were working on this. The fact is, though, the kind of analysis that was done here, it is improbable to have this number of anomalies, 9 points of forgery, on one document at one time. That's what this is really all about. That's why each document examiner is comfortable in calling it completely inauthentic. In order to invalidate these findings, you have to find another birth certificate that has the same angle date stamps, which hands down is an impossibility.
Right.
You're going to have to find 3 words, 3 X's, all lining up precisely exactly the same in the same boxes with the same ink splatter done by typewriters.
Right.
And have them lay over completely and have an astounding replication of the same items, positionally relational to each other, all at the same time.
Yeah.
And you're not going to find.
Right. And Mike, I said this earlier in the show, and I took this from you in the press conference last night. It was Reed Hayes, I believe, or one of the document examiners, that said that this was, quote, that one of these anomalies in particular, and you can expound on this, was, quote, the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, and I'll tell you about that. That Reed Hayes told me that was like a fingerprint in my business.
That's right.
And what it is these little X's that are in, 3 different boxes on the document. 2 of those X's, it is clear that they used from the Ani certificate that actually only contains 1 box with this particular X. They used it twice. And what Mr. Reed discovered was when they were doing the cut and pasting, not only did they pick up the X, they had to pick up the little box and the word above it was N-O, no. And they had to pick that up in its entirety because when the typist originally typed the Ani certificate, the X was out of the boundaries of the box, and the top of the X was bleeding into the letters N-O. So there was no way to separate the X from the box, from the letters. They had to pick it up in totality, and that's replicated twice on the same document.
Wow.
Same positioning. And the fact is that Mr. Reed, which I didn't mention yesterday, you would have to, as a typist, adjust the carriage precisely to duplicate that, and even if you tried, you wouldn't be able to do it.
That's right. We have to remember this was in the 60s. Everything was done by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you also have to keep in mind, too, that under the assumption Barack Obama's birth certificate was actually created in August of 61, August 9th, and I'm going by memory, the Ani was August 24th or something like that, they would have been 16 days apart.
Right.
So it's impossible to have the same anomalies in the same place, the same juxtaposition to each other 16 days apart. And if we also want to look at it another way, the Johanna birth certificate was copied and released in 1995 by the Department of Health when they sent it to her for a fee of $10, I think it was. And the Barack Obama certificate was created in 2011. That's like 16 years apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not going to have these same anomalies no matter how you do it.
That's right.
It's just impossible.
And the third question is very important. It goes right back to this. He says, So there must have been hundreds of potential birth documents that could have been used as the source to build. Explain why there could not have been hundreds. What's the problem with that?
Well, this is my theory on this. This either goes two ways. Johanna Ani may not have been forthcoming, and I'm not calling her a liar. She's still a person of interest, only because I can't corroborate the story that she's told us, and it may be actually factual, and it may just be one of those coincidences in the world that it happens to be the certificate. But here's why I don't think this coincidence is that far out of bounds. Given the fact that what was going on here is they needed to have a birth represented specifically at Kapolani Medical Center.
Right.
You are going to have to find in the same time period, and you have to be very tight in this time period, you're going to need certificates from Kapolani Medical Center because you need the exact same typeset.
Right. In the same time period.
Same time period. Make it look like it was done by the same typewriter. So you want a very small window. So now you're scouring through the book, if it's an inside job, the bound volume that's been secretly removed to a secure location of all 499 birth certificates. You're looking for birth certificates that were actually done at Kapolani Medical Center.
Right.
So the bottom line is it would be practically impossible to get a hold of hundreds of copies, even if it was an inside job, that would come right down to that specific time period from that hospital with the same typeset, same typewriter to make a document that looked like it came from Kapolani. So that was a good question the guy asked us. But there's the answer. The answer is, and in fact, you had 9 that you gave to the document expert, right?
Yes,
we didn't have hundreds. I don't think anybody could come up with hundreds that would meet that criteria. And you can bet the forger knew that. They had to have that criteria. And so 9 that met that criteria is pretty good. I mean,
well, let me clarify. They all weren't from Kapolani. They were from the time period.
That's right.
I didn't have 9 from all from Kapolani, but it didn't matter because the forms are the same. The templates are the same. So you have to work off of that information. Right. But the other point that you want to understand here is Reed Hayes also discovered something else, and I lightly touched on it, that the signature of Stanley Ann Dunham Obama, Reed Hayes believes, is not an original signature.
And that's his expertise.
That's his expertise.
Yeah.
And that's been taken from something else and pieced in. And here's the other thing. They needed a physician. They needed the signature of a physician. Now, I don't believe that the Ani certificate is, quote, the template, not like they scanned it in and erased everything over. I don't know that they did that, but it's the guide that they were using. And I think that's evident because when you pick up the X and you pick up the 3 other words and you laid it on the document relationally exactly the same, and then you went back and picked up another X, you're basically copying something from something else. And I just don't believe that it was, quote, the scanned-in template. I don't think that's what it was. But, however, I could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
But there was going to be other documents that had other pieces of information that they resorted to, and they pulled it over.
Yeah.
This is a cut-and-paste job. There's no two ways about it. That's why it doesn't break out correctly when you scan it.
Guys, listen, we're going to do one phone call before we go to break, and I've got Jason on line 4. Jason, you're on Freedom Friday. What's your question very quickly, and then we're going to give you the answer off air.
Just quickly, first, Mike Zulu, thank you so much for what you've done, and to Sheriff Arpaio. You guys are patriots. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. You got our prayers. The other question is, there was references and things that were said about universe-shattering information and another investigation. I assume what we heard yesterday has no part of that, and will we hear about that in the future? Thank you.
Jason, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. Did we lose Mike and Carl? We did. Okay. All right.
Brandon.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, y'all are back.
Yes, but we didn't hear the question, so if you could repeat the question, Mike will answer it.
No problem. The question is that in the past we have heard Mike and you both referenced that there was universe-shattering information, and the question was simply that the caller said that he assumed that was probably another investigation, and that wasn't the information that was released last night.
Well, he's partially correct. As the sheriff noted in his conclusion concluding statements why we didn't take questions. There was other information developed, and I want to put everybody's mind at ease. The universe-shattering information that I referred to did not have anything to do with where Mr. Obama was born or whether he was natural born. That wasn't it. However, this was developed in a subsequent investigation, and a lot of that material has already been turned over to federal authorities, so we can't comment on it. But I want to stress something, and this is what I really want people to understand. I think people, when they heard universe shattering to them, it was we found out he wasn't born in the country or something like that. Right. And I really want to make this clear, and I apologize if that was the impression that I gave. It was far darker than that. But what I want you to understand is I kind of think this is right up there. The significance of what we released yesterday is astonishing.
Yeah.
This is proof beyond the pale.
It's shocking.
It's shocking. And I'm going to tell you, and I've been doing this thing for 5 years, when we found this, I don't want to tell you what came out of my mouth. I was completely blown away. I did not believe it myself. So this is a big revelation, and I think people need to kind of get on board and understand this.
Yeah.
You have just seen what 2 forensics examiners have described as the source document to commit the biggest fraud in American history.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we have.
I think it's pretty big.
Yeah.
And so let me jump in here, Brandon, and just say that that because of that, I mean, see, people have said, you know, in reaction to this, said, "Oh, well, we've known the document was fake all along." No, you didn't.
Right. Criminal evidence, yes.
You might have guessed it. You might have felt like it. You might have even had some experience in examining documents, and you looked at it and you said, oh, this is fake. Okay, but you didn't have the ability to put together a courtroom-ready case with evidence that is secured and testified to by forensic examiners that have credentials to testify in courts around the world and that train law enforcement.
That's right. And, guys, I got to put you on hold. We have to go to a quick timeout, and we'll finish that thought when we come back. Folks, you are listening to Freedom Friday. Well, folks, welcome back to Freedom Friday, top of the second hour here, getting ready to get going. I want to welcome you back. And, I want to give some statistics real quick. Last night at the press conference held at Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, on Sheriff Joe Arpaio's Facebook page, there were 1,052,000 viewers. I talked to some friends of mine over at InfoWars today, and they were streaming live also, and their live stream had over 250,000 viewers. WorldNet Daily has had a headline article up all day today. They have told us that they have been getting over 45,000 hits per hour, individual IP addresses at that article. So this information is going out to the world. And I'm bringing back on right now, we've got Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups calling in live. And guys, we've got callers on the line, and we're going to go right to those callers. We're going to go to Marshall on line 3, and I might have just cut him off again. But I'm so sorry about that. It seems like I cut Marshall off trying to get him on the air, but we're gonna work through this little situation. Give me a little breathing room. Mallory is scolding me big time back there today, but we're gonna get these guys back on, and we'll continue with our discussion, a follow up from the press conference last night, and I'm bringing them back on. All right, Mike and Carl, are you guys back with me? Are y'all back with me now?
Yes, we're back.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I cut them off.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Get the caller on. We're ready.
No problem. We're going to go to Pete on line 4, and Pete, you're live on Freedom Friday. What's your question?
Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you, gentlemen, for all you're doing, and Miss Mallory. Real quick, Harrison J. Bonnell about the Social Security card. I think that's very important. Can anybody hit on Harrison J. Bonnell? Is that fact or is that fiction? Is it urban legend or what is that?
Thank you for your question, Pete.
Mike Zula and those guys took a look at it. Mike?
As far as that Social Security number is concerned, first of all, it was never proffered in Arizona, so there's no legal authority for us to do anything with it. But second, the problem with that information is that information was not obtained from verified sources. It was obtained from computer runs from databases that are public databases that come right out with a disclaimer telling you that it's possibly all in error or it's just mix and match speculations. So we're not going to go anywhere near that issue. I don't know about his Social Security number, and it's just not something that at any time we really focused on. It became a problem because people kept bringing it up to us, and when we looked at the investigation of that Social Security number, it was unreliable. Even a judge had said this is not evidence. And that's what we found. It was not evidence. It's speculation.
Thanks for asking it, Pete. Brandon?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And we have Marshall back on the line. We're going to have about 1 minute here to take Marshall's question, and then we're going to come up against a hard break. But, Marshall, you are on Freedom Friday. What's your question for Mike Zullo?
I want to thank them, first of all, once again, for what they've done. And I do agree it's earth-shattering that you have concrete evidence. And I was just wondering if they could speak about the lady, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, that died in the plane crash and how she related to this birth certificate.
Loretta Fuddy. Marshall, thank you for your question. Mike?
Loretta Fuddy was the individual who was appointed as the Director of Health that released the Obama certificate. Loretta Fuddy was someone that was always on our radar screen. We did not speak about her publicly. She was someone that I would have loved to have sat down and interviewed. If there was anything nefarious going on here, obviously, as the director, she would have known about it. Now, does that mean that she was killed in that plane crash through some foul play? I don't know. I can't tell you. It is a little odd that she's the only one dies in a perfect touchdown water landing.
Yeah.
But stranger things have happened, so I don't really know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, we're coming up against a hard break here. Folks, you are listening to Freedom Friday. We'll be back right after this break. Phone lines will be open. You can ask questions to Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups. This is Brandon Gallups sitting in on Freedom Friday. And a very special edition of Freedom Friday today on December the 16th. We have had live with us the entire show. We have had Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups calling in from Arizona. This is Brandon Gallups hosting live in studio today, and we've just been doing a follow-up on the press conference held last night at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Joe Arpaio, Detective Mike Zullo releasing 5 years worth of findings in their criminal investigation into the birth certificate of one Barack Hussein Obama, the only document ever offered by the man in the White House to prove to us, the American people, that he is even eligible to hold the office, to make the decisions, to do the things that he has done over the last 8 years. And after 5 years of criminal investigation, it is the determination of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office that that document is 100% fraudulent. 2 different document examiners on 2 different continents, unbeknownst to each other, both came to the same conclusion forensically. The document was 100% fabricated and is not authentic in any way. Phone lines are open, 850-623-1330, 850-623-1330. If you want to call in and ask a question to Mike Zullo or Carl Gallups about any of this, please call in. As I said in the last hour, just be prepared to ask a very direct question and then take your answer off air. We want to keep the lines open and allow as many people to call in as possible. And it's kind of funny. I was reading through, Obama gave Mike, Carl, are you with us here on the line?
Yes, we are, and I've got some email questions we can get to, but you go ahead.
Great. Well, listen, I just was looking at some of the headlines here on Drudge, and, Obama gave his supposedly his last press conference today before he leaves office, and the very top headline on Drudge in red is this: drama in the press room. A reporter gets sick as Obama talks.
Yeah, I saw
Has
that
anybody
video.
else ever gotten sick listening to this man talk? I just got to ask the question. I mean, the woman passed out. Obama had to call for his own personal White House doctors to come and attend to her. And the look of disgust on his face when it was going on is priceless.
Yeah. I saw that video, Brandon.
Yeah. And he coined a new term today in that press conference. He has labeled, we've seen several new terms pop up the last few weeks. The alt-right media, brand new term. And then we have the fake news term, which, of course, Mike Zullo and Sheriff Joe Arpaio last night exposed the biggest piece of fake news potentially in American history. Last night.
Yeah.
The biggest piece of fake news in American history exposed.
No doubt.
Yeah. And so, but today, Obama has coined a new term that those of us who now subscribe to the alt-right or to fake news, we are domestic propagandist. Domestic propagandist. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So what are they?
Well, I have some opinions on that. I don't think we need to get into that right now on live radio. We'll get the station shut down.
That's what I want to say to Obama. I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off me and sticks on you.
The hypocrisy knows no bounds. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. But, for some folks that are just tuning in, I know people are just getting off from work. We've covered a lot of ground so far, but I think pretty revealing to the amount of people that have remained interested in this topic over the years and that want to see justice done in this case. On Sheriff Arpaio's Facebook page last night, over 1 million people viewed the conference live. I talked to some friends at InfoWars earlier today, and they carried the press conference live. They streamed it live. Over 250,000 people tuned in on their live stream to watch last night. WorldNet Daily was running the headline article on this, all day today. It's been center column a drudge most of the day today. And WorldNet Daily let us know that they have been getting upwards of 45,000 hits per hour on their main story on this topic today. So people want to know what is going on with this. People want the truth, and people want justice to be served in this case. So, do you guys want to go right back to the phone lines? I have 2 callers on the line, or do you have a email question that we need to address first?
Well, we've got email questions, but since we have live callers on the line, why don't we go there first, Brent?
All right, we'll do that. We are going to go to Eric on line 3. Eric, you are live on Freedom Friday. What's your question?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to know, now that this document is proven to be a forgery, and Mike Zulu also looked into the selective service card, and that looks like a forgery, do we now have a constitutional crisis on our hands, and is there anything that we can do if there is one? Thank you.
Mike, you want to answer that? Eric, thank you for your call.
What I think everyone needs to understand is the mission of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office in looking at this was not to pursue a case for criminal charges. This was criminal activity, and it was investigational information. We developed this because this is going to end up being a federal matter if it goes anywhere. And this is information that is going to be turned over, like the sheriff said, to federal authorities before January. Is it a constitutional crisis? Well, that's going to be dependent on whatever the federal authorities decide to do with this information. I can tell you this. I am extremely confident that this certificate, as it stands, is inauthentic. It is a forgery. I am pretty confident, too, that the selective service card, as we demonstrated, is another forgery. But those would be document crimes. We don't know what the real reason is that this thing was made. We're only speculating. And that's going to have a big determination if there ever was some kind of constitutional crisis. I guess you could sit here and think, well, we could just roll back everything and erase Obama completely. There's some problems with that theory, and it's been pretty well spelled out in some, other court activities, that once someone is elected, even though they may not have had the right to sit there, things that have been voted on, they usually stand. As far as executive orders, we all know what's going to happen with those. But I'm not a constitutional attorney, obviously. That's a question for them. But look, I'm going to tell you this. After what I have seen, what I've been through for the last 5 years, if an investigation was opened on this document, this is going to go bad for a lot of people as it unfolds.
Yeah.
This is bad. Yeah. Make no mistake about it. How this ends up, I have no idea. It's going to be out of my hands relatively soon.
And think about it, just philosophically speaking, Congress has been complicit in this because they never bothered to examine the information.
That's right.
The media has been complicit in this because they never bothered to vet this. Congress is particularly constitutionally liable because the Constitution is clear that the Electoral College is supposed to vet the eligibility of the candidates, and they never did that. The Congressional Research Office verified that in writing a few years ago, and we posted that on PNN. It was never done. So they're complicit. The media is complicit. Federal courts are complicit. This thing was kicked around like a can down the road for years. Nobody would take it up and hear the case on its merits. Nobody would do it. So, people, the DOJ is complicit. Federal law enforcement might be complicit, philosophically speaking. So So you can imagine that a lot of people are going in protection mode right now,
That's
probably.
Right.
And so that has to be overcome. Well, we'll see. We've got a man that's getting ready to be president that was trashed and called a birther over this issue, and he's the one that got the thing put there, and now we've discovered it's a complete forgery. So this vindicates Donald Trump. It vindicates him. Yes, it vindicates Sheriff Arpaio and Mike Zullo and myself and anyone else who dared to ask questions against the government narrative. But it vindicates the next president of the United States. There will be a new DOJ. There will be a new FBI, if you will. There will be a new attitude in Congress. There will be new judges on the courts and a new Supreme Court. There might even be a new media emerging out of this. The mainstream media is becoming irrelevant.
Yes.
People like WND and Drudge and Breitbart and InfoWars and, PNN, and they're becoming more and more the media that people turn to. So we'll see. Sheriff Arpaio said last night, that he's hoping that Congress will pick this up. He's going to press for it, and that there will be investigations done. And more information that was discovered during this whole process has already been turned over to appropriate authorities. So I don't think this story is over. It may be. We've seen stranger things, but I really don't think this story is over yet.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I hope that's not. And I would remind that last caller and everybody listening right now, and Mike, you can speak to this, but the sheriff was very clear last night, and Mike, you were clear last night and have been clear today. The information presented last night, and in the sheriff's words, other sensitive information is being turned over to federal authorities. So if nothing is done, then it is the responsibility of we the people to then hold those federal authorities, being Congress, being the FBI and the powers that be, to hold them responsible. Well, how do we do that? Well, we're going to have congressional elections again in 2 more years. There's a very easy way to do it. So yeah, absolutely. And Mike, I know you wanted to address that, maybe a little more in depth, the fact that this information is being handed over to higher authorities.
Well, it is, and it's the sheriff's plan to hand it over to Congress. That's where we want it to go. Look, you have to go back in time and kind of understand that, I have to tell you, there's some things that happen only by divine intervention as far as this document is concerned. I could tell you that if the timing was different and we had come up with this information 2 years ago, it would have went absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
Nowhere. There would have been no place to turn it over to.
Yeah. Could you imagine trying to give it to Eric Holder or Loretta Lynch? Yeah.
That was the problem we had in the beginning.
Right. Or James Comey. You want to give it to James Comey? Yeah.
I mean, where are we going with it? Where could we go with it? And, we tried to go to Congress. Carl was there. He made an appointment happen. The only congressperson that was forthright with me was Michelle Bachmann. When she told me, they all know there's something wrong with it, but John Boehner will never allow it to come forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's disheartening. But, you said something that was very interesting. The time to push for this, and we'll have to figure that out in the next few weeks, but the time to push for this is going to be when there's a new Congress in session.
Yeah.
And it needs to be we the people.
That's right.
Don't wait for them not to act. You have to push them to act.
Force them to act. That's right.
And that's what the sheriff is. And I'll tell you, look, I'm the person that lost 5 years out of their life in this. But I'm going to tell you, what I really want to see is I want to see legislation that this never happens again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Never happens again.
Yeah.
The American people should not be subjected to this kind of fraud and this kind of deception.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And guys, we're getting ready to have to take another break here. But Mike, you are exactly right that it is our responsibility as the people to force Congress, to force our elected officials to make this an issue. And I hope that if we have learned one thing through this last election cycle, it is the power of we the people through the alt-right and through our fake news outlets of Facebook and the Internet and YouTube and other sites. It is the responsibility of we the people to further press this issue. You're listening to Freedom Friday. We'll be right back after this break. Well, folks, welcome back to Freedom Friday. Gulf Coast Talk Radio. This is Brandon Gallups filling in today for Carl Gallups, and we have had on the phone lines live all day today for the entirety of the show. We have had Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups calling in from Phoenix, Arizona, where last night was held the final press conference, if you will, on 5 years of investigative work by the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, Detective Mike Zullo, and the cold case posse into the Obama birth certificate. We've been covering that the entire show. Phone lines are open, 850-623-1330. We are taking your calls and questions from Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups, and we are going to go straight back to the phone lines right now, and we are going to go to Billy on line 4. Billy, what's your question?
Hey, guys. You kind of touched on this earlier. With our corrupt government and corrupt judiciary, how in the world does anything ever happen to this? Just like with Hillary Clinton and other politicians, these people are completely untouchable. Even local attorneys are untouchable. I mean, I know a personal case where one local attorney has had several drunk driving cases, and they all get thrown out. So, I mean, we can't do anything with these people, and just wanted you guys to comment on that and see if you think this will go anywhere.
Billy, thank you for your question, and that is an excellent point. A lot of corruption at all levels of government. Guys, y'all want to handle that first? I certainly have some thoughts on it, but y'all go ahead.
Well, you know, I have to tell you, I understand his frustration.
Yeah.
You know, we faced it for the last 5 years with this. There was just no place to take it. You know, I could only hope and pray that something changes, you know, as time, you know, moves on. Look, let's be real. If we even turn this over to Congress and they take it, they're not going to do anything with this for a while, even
right.
if they ever do anything with it. It's going to take some time. But, you know, this is where it comes back to we the people. You got to start voting people out. You know, you have to change the playing field. You know, the one thing that they're proposing there is term limits. I think that's really a good thing because
yes.
obviously we see what's happened in the swamp. But Congress can do something with this. Congress can actually do something with this. And if you get the right person to head up the DOJ, something can happen here.
Yeah.
Is it going to happen? I don't know. But
right. And I think, Mike, I think a lot of people are hopeful that under a Trump administration with a Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who is a law and order Constitution guy, that maybe something will be done about this. And listen, I agree wholeheartedly with you and the sheriff that, you know, the bottom line is at this point, let's make sure it never happens again.
Yeah, and Brendan, let me just weigh in and say that's the main thing we want right now. Oh, I know there are people out there saying, well, the main thing I want is Obama in jail.
Yeah, me too.
That's probably not going to happen. I mean, it's just well, then I want somebody else in jail. I know. Well, it may come to somebody, you know, being finger on them and they wind up in prison, who knows. But what we're doing is vindicating Donald Trump, vindicating everybody that's ever asked the questions, vindicating the marginalization and the trashing that's happened to the sheriff's office and everybody who's said, you know, something's wrong with this. And now we've proven it. Now we've proven it. It's ready to go to courtroom. So it's a new day. We're going to have a new president, a new DOJ, new everything, and we are hoping and praying and pushing and prodding that somebody in authority, DOJ, Congress, FBI, would at least pick up this evidence, this concrete, in-stone evidence that this is a fraud. Because the question is, why? Why did they do it? And the answers are not good. Somebody needs to look at this. So they'll investigate the air pressure of footballs. They'll investigate steroid use by baseball players, but they won't investigate this under a Trump presidency?
Yeah.
I have a feeling something else is going to happen to this. I really do.
I thought that line by the sheriff last night was brilliant about that Congress would investigate underinflated footballs, referencing Deflategate, you know, with Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, but they won't address a matter that goes to the heart of our country, of our existence, to our Constitution, to our founding documents, and to the constitutional republic that we supposedly still are. All right, we still got callers on the line, guys. We are going to go to Dennis on line 3. Dennis, you're on Freedom Friday. What's your question?
Hey, how you doing? Do you think the mainstream media have ramped up their fake news talk because they knew you were about to expose this birth certificate?
Dennis, excellent question, and we have speculated here on that some on Freedom Friday the last several weeks, but Mike, Carl, either one of you guys want to handle that?
I have to tell you, it was amazing to me that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a press conference after we're done with this releasing of information.
I thought the same thing, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, come on. You kind of look at that. But I could go the other side. It was nice of Donald Trump to postpone his press conference so he wouldn't hinder ours.
Yeah.
So I do kind of agree that, yeah, I do know they do that. And I'll share this with you. There were times that Carl and we were kind of testing this theory that our phones were being monitored, and a couple times in private conversations, we threw out phony dates about when we were releasing information. And within 24 to 48 hours of us doing that fictitiously on the phone, we would see MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News do hit pieces on the birth issue out of the blue.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
wait a minute, you mean Fox News was complicit in that too, Mike?
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly's good on that.
Oh, my goodness gracious. But Glenn Beck probably never did anything like that. Wow, yeah.
No. I mean, we go down the line of people who have really – see, that's the thing. They're complicit in this. I'm not saying criminally complicit. I'm just saying just philosophically and idiotically complicit in this. And so, they have to resist this. What Sheriff Arpaio and Mike Zullo presented yesterday is earth-shattering, concrete, foundational courtroom evidence that you could convict a murder suspect on if you had this kind of DNA evidence, if you will. This is huge, and it makes these guys look horrible. So, of course, they're going to push back on it. They almost have to survive.
Yeah. And I want to say this again because I said it going out to break, but if we learned anything in this last election cycle, it is the power of we the people, the power of, yes, the alternative media, of the, quote, fake news. Because we are the ones that pushed the whole agenda in this election cycle. And, we had many conversations before this press conference leading up to it that if we could get these headlines into WorldNet Daily, into Drudge, into InfoWars, into Breitbart, then we would reach more people than if the entire mainstream media showed up and covered it. And guess what? It has happened. So there you go. Well, guys, we're coming up against a hard break here, and we're going to return in just a few minutes, and we're going to continue our conversation with Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups and the conclusion of the results of a 5-year criminal investigation into the birth certificate of Barack Obama, in which it has been concluded by 2 different document examiners on 2 different continents to be a fraud. You are listening to Freedom Friday. Well, folks, welcome back to Freedom Friday on this beautiful Friday afternoon here along the Gulf Coast. It is Friday, December the 16th. We have had a very special show today. For the entirety of today's show, we have been joined via telephone by Detective Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups, your normal host here on Freedom Friday. This is Brandon Gallups filling in today, and I just want to say thank you for the privilege and honor of allowing me to sit in this seat today and to do this service today here on Freedom Friday. And we just want to let folks know the phone lines are open. We are discussing the findings presented last night by Detective Mike Zullo, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, into the Obama birth certificate case. They presented those findings last night via press conference from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. We've just been discussing the follow-up on that today, the fallout. We've been taking phone calls, and the phone lines are still open, 850-623-1330, and we're going to go right back to the phone lines. We are going to go to Bradley. Bradley, man, you've been holding a long time, brother. Welcome to Freedom Friday, and what is your question?
Well, thank you, and I want to first praise Sheriff Joe and Lieutenant Mike Zullo for their tireless efforts getting to the bottom of the birth certificate issue. Now, my question is, in your opinions, should Donald Trump's first executive order be to strip Barack Obama of his international passports?
Bradley, interesting question. A lot of giggles and chuckles going around here.
Here's the answer. Yes, he should. Next question.
Next caller, next question.
I'm on the side of that. I actually wish he would just use it and leave.
Yeah.
So I'm good either way.
Maybe he and Hillary could catch the same jet out of town. But,
there you go.
Yeah, it's interesting, guys. Before we went to break, one of the callers asked, did we think that this whole fake news agenda was brought out ahead of the press conference? And, Mike, you addressed that a little bit, and then we came up against the break. But, you know, isn't it amazing? You have two of the biggest political players in the world that are absolutely under the gun right now. You know, Obama with the birth certificate issue, and Hillary and all of her troubles linked to different emails and all the speculation going around there of different things that, you know, some of those emails could have been code worded about and everything, that this fake news agenda hit right now. You know, and the internet and all of these supposed fake news websites have been around for a long, long time. But it is interesting, the timing of all these events.
Well, you know, Brandon, really quick on that. This press conference that he held today could have been scheduled for him breaking out off of his vacation.
Yeah.
And because of what the sheriff did here, they had to move it up.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
this is choreographed.
Yeah, no, and listen, we've said it here, I don't know how many times, there is nothing that happens on the national and world scale that is not a calculated, and you just said a brilliant word, choreographed move. And there's absolutely no doubt about it. And look at what was addressed today in this press conference. You know, I said earlier, Obama has invented a new term today. We are now all domestic propagandist. If you don't agree with MSNBC and CNN and Fox News, you are a domestic propagandist, according.
Yeah. We might be domestic propagandists, but they are the original propagandists. I mean, you know,
yeah.
It's amazing. Well, and all you have to do to figure out which news source you'd rather listen to, look at the last presidential election. Who was right and who was wrong?
I keep pointing to these two events, the presidential election and Brexit. The two of the largest events, you know, in the last 100 years of history, you know, on the world stage for Brexit, and then in U.S. history, this presidential election, and the mainstream, the real fake news got it wrong 100% of the time. And it is amazing how often that seems to happen. So, well, look, I know that you've had some questions coming in via email and Facebook, so I think let's address a couple of those questions while we have a minute.
Okay. Yeah, let's do. Thank you. And for folks that want to call in, 850-623-1330, we'll take your phone calls as well. But yeah, Mike, this is for you. This comes in from Texas, I believe. The question is, can you explain Jerome Corsi's involvement in the investigation, and how did he find the source document? Because people, if you're just tuning in, that was the purpose of this news conference, was to show that not only do we know Obama's birth certificate is a fraud and a forgery and a fabrication, but we now know the source document that was used to fabricate it. We know the name on the source document is Johanna Ani from Hawaii. Her birth certificate was used. It was used. And two forensic document experts from two continents using two different methods came to the same conclusions. Neither one of them knew the other was working on it. It is a fabrication, and Johanna Ani's document was used. So this question is, how did Jerome Corsi get involved in this, and how did he just happen to find the source document? Mike?
Well, Jerome Corsi's involvement started actually in the very beginning when the surprise Tea Party folk came to the sheriff and asked him to look into it. They suggested that we contact Jerome Corsi, and in fact, they flew Jerome Corsi in to meet with us. Jerome Corsi was compiling information for his book when he challenged, where is the birth certificate? So Jerome Corsi had a lot of information. Now, Jerome Corsi's information was just that, information. It wasn't vetted by any law enforcement source, so we collected that as information. The only piece of evidence that was really turned over was that hard copy birth certificate of Johanna Ani. The way Corsi got it was he was going to Hawaii after the release of the Obama certificate, and through a mutual acquaintance, arrangements were made to show Jerome Corsi the Ani certificate by Miss Ani herself. Now, I'll grant you that struck me as suspicious, and that's what prompted me to really look deeper into the Ani certificate, was the fact that it was proffered up to Jerome Corsi. So the jury's still out on me whether that was the only time that document was ever released. Could it have been released years earlier at the request of somebody over in Hawaii? Absolutely. I mean, I just don't know that, and that's why I say it's only two ways this is going to go. If her story is real, that she never lost her birth certificate and never had one out of her sight and was always locked up, then they were getting this information from inside the Department of Health. If not, maybe she gave her certificate to somebody who took it and utilized it. We just don't know at this point.
Yeah. So that answers that question. And then the other one, where we have been asked by several people, well, certainly there must have been hundreds of documents, Mike, that you could have gotten a hold of, but instead you had 8 or 9 documents. On these documents was one of them. How come you didn't have a box full of Hawaii birth certificates to work from?
Well, the short answer is we're not the Department of Health. They would have had a box full because they have access to every one of them. You have to understand, we had to literally find these by going out on the street and trying to find people that would give us their certificates.
Right.
So it wasn't an easy task. And I don't remember the exact count. I could be off by 500 here, but it was either, 700, 800 births a year or 1,400 births a year in Hawaii at that time. It's a very small number. So you're talking, let's just say it was 1,200 to call it even. You're talking about 100 births, 100 certificates generated every month. Out of that, you have to find the ones that are out of Kapolani. Maybe it's 30. I mean, Kapolani at that point in time was only a 50-bed facility. So when you got the whole state only producing 100 births, how many were coming out of Honolulu at that time? There were other hospitals in Honolulu. So look, those answers I can't tell you. But the reason why we don't have hundreds is we had to acquire these by contacting people. And the people aren't just going to give you their birth certificate. They don't even care if you are the police. They're just not going to give them to you. So we didn't have that luxury. I wish I did, because I'm sure my forensics team in Italy would have had this 1,000,000 times more probable it's inauthentic. You're not going to reproduce it. So going after these kind of, numbers games, I understand. The only number game you have to know is there's 9 points of forgery here, and it needs to look exactly like that, and you got to go find another birth certificate to match it.
Yeah.
And it ain't only the Ani. I mean, the Ani is the only one that's going to do it.
Yeah. And Mike, I think it's important to mention also, you made this point last night, you guys were not necessarily welcomed with open arms by the Department of Health in Hawaii.
No, we weren't welcomed with arms, actually. I told you earlier, they called the police on us trying to get us out of there. And we're the police.
Yeah.
I've never seen that in my life. And I'll tell you that, when I went to attempt to interview Verna K. Lee, they called the police there once they found out who I was and they Googled my name. Verna K. Lee is the state registrar, as appears at the bottom. Everybody thought it was UK Lee. She's Verna K. Lee, the person that was stamping these signatures. She was the registrar that would accept these documents.
Yeah.
She told me exactly how these things worked, and I went there to interview her personally, and people got in the way and made sure that didn't happen.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, guys, we have another caller on the line. We are going to go to Joe on line 3. Joe, what's your question?
Yes, I was going to make a statement first if I could. It's funny that Barack Obama would call people domestic propagandizers when he's the one that did the executive order that now allows the federal government to use propaganda on the American public, and where it used to be illegal.
Yeah, that happened through the NDAA Act. You are exactly right. Do you have a question for Mike or for Carl?
Yeah, my question was about what do they think is going to happen, and it's kind of off topic, but with Obama now, you put this stuff out here, and you know how they always do it. When something comes out that's going to embarrass them, they call it the crisis. And I'm terrified they're going to start something with Russia, because he's saying he went and said that he's going to do something to Russia because they think Russia hacked us, and he said that they're going to hit Russia. And I'm just worried about, what do you think? I guess what can we do to even stop him from starting basically a barn fire as they run out of the White House that Trump's going to have to try to clean up?
Yeah. Joe, that's an excellent point, and I'm going to tell you, you're not the only person who thinks that. And let me just give a quote from Obama today in his press conference that he said that we will, quote, take action against Russia for their interfering in our elections. So, Mike, any thoughts on that?
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
But let me just address 2 points to you. The truth is being called propaganda now by these people.
That's right. That's right.
It's like the father of lies calling the truth, a lie. So you don't even know what that even means, all this tough talk. I don't know what he could possibly do. I also don't think it's going to be some big World War III thing. I think Russia would be restrained enough to wait the 20 days or whatever's left before, the changing of the regime. So I don't really have an answer. I don't have a crystal ball. Carl, you have a thought on that?
Yeah, no, I don't. But Brandon, you mentioned how disturbing that word was about take action.
Yeah.
Well, I heard the word, because I was listening to most of it, I heard him say, we will retaliate. That's a much stronger word, and I just Googled it, and as a matter of fact, the first 2 or 3 things that came up, including Bing.com News, which is pretty heavy mainstream, they quote him as saying, Obama says that he will, Barack Obama says the United States will retaliate against Russian hacking. Retaliate. I mean, that's words of war, I guess. I mean, again, I'm not a legal expert here on what words can be used to start a war, but I don't mind telling you, when I heard those words today come out of his mouth, I was taken back. So there's no telling. We've watched this guy for 8 years. I'm not hoping for the best. I'm not hoping for the worst. I'm not trying to predict the worst. I'm praying for the best. I'm just praying these next couple of weeks go by, we can get Donald Trump in office and we can move forward. But listen, Mike and I knew when this press conference was going to be held, we knew there would be all kinds of, this is spiritual, there would be all kinds of demonic roadblocks coming our way. There would be all kinds of psychological and philosophical and even legal roadblocks coming our way, as well as mainstream media, and we're watching it all unfold right now.
No, we are. I say it kind of jokingly, but I wonder when the headline is going to hit that the Russians went to Hawaii and removed the original birth certificate from record, and then Vladimir Putin instructed his hackers to hack into the White House system, create the document, and then post it on the White House website.
Brandon, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something what I'm very concerned about. I can't believe I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Russia's getting a bad rap. I don't think they did it.
Yeah.
I think it was our own folks. I think it's our own NSA.
Yeah.
I think people in our own government have had enough. Really, they know what's been going on here. I mean, let's face it. What was the, big obstacles that Russia put in here? What, the truth about Hillary Clinton and her emails?
Yeah.
It was the truth. The truth these people hate. I don't think Russia did that. And I know for a fact, Bill Binney was one of the individuals in another investigation that I had the privilege of meeting. He's one of the people that developed the harvesting software that the government uses to harvest mass amounts of information. And even he thinks it was our own folks.
Yeah.
Those were patriots.
Well, Mike, just to your point, and then we're going to have to take a break, guys, but to your point, the state of Georgia, their elections officials say that it was our own people that tried to hack into their election system during the election.
And that's why I think the big Russian cover is coming now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's why we're seeing this forced into the mainstream right now. And we are going to take a break, folks. This will be our last break. We'll be back with the last segment of the day. You have been listening to Freedom Friday. Brandon Gallups hosting today. We've had on the phone with us the entire show Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups from Phoenix, Arizona. We'll be right back after these messages. Well, folks, welcome back to Freedom Friday. This is Brandon Gallups. I've been filling in today in studio, and we have had for the entire 2 hours today, we have had Detective Mike Zullo and Carl Gallups calling in from Phoenix, Arizona, doing a follow-up for the press conference that was held there last night, releasing 5 years' worth of findings into the birth certificate offered on the White House website of Barack Obama. And after 5 years, it has been proven forensically, 2 different document examiners on 2 different continents, operating totally unbeknownst to each other, using 2 different methods of technology in their forensic examination, both coming to the same conclusion. The only document ever offered to we the people proving that Barack Hussein Obama is eligible to be president is a fraud. There you have it, folks. You want universe-shattering information? I don't think that it gets much deeper than that, folks. We have been handed the biggest piece of fake news that ever existed for the last 5 years, and so Before we go back to the phone lines, and we do have another caller on the line, I want to tell people that tomorrow night at Hickory Hammock Baptist Church, for our local listening audience, Hickory Hammock Baptist Church, which our normal host here, Carl Gallups, is the pastor there, they will be offering tomorrow night, absolutely free to the community, a Bethlehem Live event. They have a full-scale setup of the town of Bethlehem built on their property there, and you can come and walk through and enjoy the sights and sounds just as it would have seemed those years ago in the town of Bethlehem as we celebrate this amazing time of year in the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And that is available to the community tomorrow night from 5 to 9 p.m. at Hickory Hammock Baptist Church on Hickory Hammock Road in Milton, Florida, absolutely free to the community. So I encourage folks to come out and be a part of that. It is an amazing event. That's tomorrow night, Hickory Hammock Baptist Church from 5 to 9 p.m., Bethlehem Live. And we're going to bring Mike and Carl back on, and we are going to go to our last caller of the day. We're going to go to Tim. Tim, you're on Freedom Friday. What's your question, man?
Yes, sir. As one of the wee little people, I was working as a graphic artist for a newspaper when this document dropped. I've waited with bated breath and been very vocal about what I saw right off as complications or forgery items. At every turn, this has been blocked, mimicked, made fun of. What do you plan to do if it's just the same old action? If Donald Trump doesn't pick it up and doesn't do anything about it? I mean, you've been so focused on this for the last 5 years of your life. Will you try to gather other sheriffs, or will that, I mean, how will you react?
Tim, that's an excellent question. Mike, you want to address that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I am going to do what we need to do now to get it into the hands of Congress. But I think at this juncture, I think we need to change the focus of that question. And I'm going to ask, what are you prepared to do?
Yeah.
Because I've invested the 5 years, and I've got the evidence, and I can prove it. But it's not a fight that I can take on by myself and give another 5 years to. This is going to take the American people to demand this.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to take.
No, you're right, Mike.
Just going there and asking, that isn't going to do it. It's going to take a big effort.
Yeah.
So it's, what are you prepared to do?
No, it takes phone calls, it takes emails, it takes storming town hall meetings and blasting out the question, getting run out of town hall meetings if that's what it takes to get this put into the hands of Congress and to ultimately try and force their hand on this, or just vote them out of office.
Brandon, let me remind our listeners very quickly. I know we're running out of time. Go to carlgallups.com, carlgallups.com. Get a podcast of this show tomorrow. Also, there are 2 links in yellow. One of them is a link to the entire press conference, 1 hour long. The other one is to a 7-minute video that shows you the 9 points of fraud lifted from the ANI document. It is tremendous. Go to carlgallups.com. And then I want to say to our audience, you have been vindicated. Just as Mike Zullo and I have been promising you for years, this day was coming. You have been vindicated regardless of who does what with it from this point forward. You were right all along. That birth certificate is a fraud. Now it's courtroom ready to be.
That's exactly right. Folks, you've been listening to Freedom Friday. Brandon Gallups filling in today. Thank you for being here.